Okay, I'm delighted to welcome Daniel Murphy from Apex Nutrition to this week's YouTube episode. I still must get used to saying YouTube episode as opposed to podcast. So, Daniel is part of the Cork City Marathon team, I suppose, and he's the official nutrition partner to the Cork City Marathon again this year. So, Daniel, welcome to the YouTube episode.
Thanks for having me.
Great to have you on board, Daniel. So, again, for those that don't know, Daniel is kind of working with our Cork City Marathon leaders. But again, we're also going to just try and use this to help the everyday runner and everyone from all levels on how they can better use nutrition, I suppose, and become a better runner as a result. So, Daniel, maybe just to introduce yourself, maybe give us your background and who you are and what you do.
Yep. I'm a registered dietitian with Apex Nutrition. I kind of started off with an undergrad in public health, went on to do a postgrad in nutritional science, and then did a master's in in dietetics. Kind of over the past 5 years, I've kind of built up Apex Nutrition, and we have a team of kind of three at the moment now, working in all areas of kind of nutrition in terms of weight loss, sport performance, and clinical nutrition as well too.
Brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. And I suppose we'll link it forward then a bit. So, like, obviously, nutrition is probably so important in the everyday life of every person. And I suppose it seems to me it gets harder and harder. There's so many treats out there staring in the face these days. But the importance of a balanced, healthy diet for the average person, and then the importance of a good diet for a runner.
Yeah. So like from an average person, like it's all about kind of just long-term health like that. I think a lot of people, like you get away with a lot of stuff when we're younger like that, and a lot of those habits can kind of carry on then into to later life. And that's kind of where, we don't get away with things. There can be things, like heart health comes up a lot. Like people tend to get things like cholesterol scares and diabetes and things like that too. So just for like and just kind of general mood is a big thing now at the moment in terms of like mental health and the benefits that eating well can do for you, like, are amazing, and how that's linked with gut health. So like if our gut feels really good, we feel really good as well too. So just for like every day just feeling really good, like definitely having a balanced diet is going to be beneficial. In terms of running, it's like becoming more and more important in the sporting world, and especially if you're like in the marathon setting, if you're competing for times and want to recover properly, then like nutrition is going to be essential. It's not like, unless again that you're kind of really starting out in your marathon career, and you're really young, like you might get away with kind of a lot more, but um yeah, like if you really are competing and taking it seriously, and like also not even taking it seriously, if you're just kind of showing up on the day, just your overall recovery is super important, and nutrition will do a lot for that.
Yeah. And I suppose a lot of people now are really getting in particular with the marathon, they're probably getting into building miles at the moment and building longer weeks, I suppose, for themselves. And take us through, maybe someone who's fueling well and how they're performing and maybe recovering versus someone who may be neglecting it, and I suppose the damage maybe or how hard are they possibly making it for themselves.
Like, and it's particularly once it starts picking up, that's when you'll start to really feel it. Like a lot of people will like maybe fuel adequately at the start, like give themselves enough, but then the runs start to get longer, and like you need more food then for the longer you go. You'll start like someone that is fueling really well, like number one will have decent enough energy. You should feel really good on your runs. You also probably shouldn't be suffering from much kind of stomach discomfort. There shouldn't really be much kind of gastro issues like that if you have it well timed as well too. And a lot of the time we find that things like sugar cravings tend to pop up a lot, and people will get uncontrollable cravings if they feel that like they're doing too much and not eating enough and giving themselves enough carbohydrate. Outside that, from a recovery standpoint, I think it becomes overlooked a lot of the time, and people don't focus on recovery. It's all about kind of the performance side and getting out and actually doing the runs. But the faster you can recover, the faster you get out and like start challenging like previous kind of times. So the like if someone is doing their nutrition well, they're going to feel fresh the next time that they do go out for a run. And if someone isn't, like you're going to start feeling really sore. Like if you're really not feeling well, you might actually kind of miss runs, and that's going to impact your training then as well to coming closer to the marathon when they probably even get longer. Um, and yeah, like your ability to kind of get back out is just going to do so much kind of on the day as well too. So yeah, those are kind of the three big areas.
Is there a kind of, I know I've seen it said before, but is there kind of mix of again, someone that's building their mileage now, maybe, um, is there kind of healthy mix of proportion of carbohydrate versus protein, etc.? Is there a golden rule there?
Yeah, like so it's very dependent on the individual and like their actual kind of their level of kind of running and how much they're kind of going doing as well too. It normally like it can range anywhere from about kind of 5 to like up to 12 grams carbohydrate per kg of body weight. The 10 to kind of 12 range of carbohydrate is going to be kind of more of a carb load. That's initially kind of when like the 24 hours really kind of before the race, you're going to really take it up and go fairly high. So like if you're looking at an 80 kg person, that could be 800 grams of carbohydrate, which is a lot. It's
Yeah.
a load. So and then kind of with that, it's all about adjusting the type of carbohydrate that you're having. Whereas kind of on the day-to-day kind of basis, like the shorter runs anywhere kind of from the 5 to 8, and then kind of the longer runs anywhere from about kind of the 6 to 9 grams per kg of body weight kind of works out pretty well.
Yeah. If you were to give kind of tips to people of a pre and post run, like in particular a hard session or a long run, maybe where the body is probably being impacted a bit more, what would you recommend?
So like I with the hard sessions are actually really good for trialing different kind of food because like it takes multiple kind of exposures for your body to actually like when you're eating carbohydrate and running it takes multiple kind of exposures for your body to actually get used to that, and particularly the hard sessions are going to be a lot harder on your stomach and when you're consuming food as well. So I would really kind of encourage like number one, to have kind of like a carbohydrate, sorry, have a carbohydrate 2 to 3 hours before starting, and that could be something like oats if it's early in the morning. That could be something like even a sandwich, pasta, rice kind of later on in the day. And having that 2 to 3 hours is just kind of a nice slow steady release of carbohydrate. That kind of hour beforehand, something like fruit, something you can mix things like honey and maple syrup into things as well too, because those are digested a lot faster. And like again, kind of with those harder sessions, that might impact the stomach a little bit more. So it's good to kind of experiment with that. Um, so then I suppose kind of the post after then you're looking at something like your dinner, something with a protein and carbohydrate source as well too. Like with the protein that's going to help with just recovery. And that's your chicken, fish, meat, all those and dairy products. And also with your carbohydrate. So what happens when we run is our glycogen stores are reduced. So that's basically just the stored carbohydrate when we carbohydrate our muscles store it, and that depletes as we run. And if we reintroduce carbohydrate afterwards as well too, those fill up, and that's actually been proven as well as protein to kind of aid the kind of overall recovery process. So those kind of two things, kind of pre and post, would be really beneficial.
Um, drinks seem to be becoming more and more common, these days, these kind of carb drinks for fueling before, during, and after as well. Maybe is there a place for them? Yeah.
You can't like so it's all kind of again kind of like individual. It's about kind of I suppose experimenting and see what works best for you.
Mhm.
Like the, just in terms of kind of like liquids, it's nice to kind of almost kind of get a mix of the gels and liquids and almost solid food as well too sometimes. Because if you take on too much liquids too at the same time, you could be running to the bathroom. If you take on too much solids, you might become like dehydrated and things like that. And um yeah, like so it's all about kind of coming up with a general kind of strategy and also like even how much liquids you can actually carry with you on the day as well too. Like are you going wearing a
Yeah.
vest and things like that. So if you're going planning on using it throughout like on the day, just practice with it on the lead up, and if it works well, then include it. Once it's carbohydrate and you're getting steady carbohydrate throughout, then it's all well and good.
Yeah. Um, Sometimes we hear about like there's a golden time frame after a run, especially again a hard session, maybe to refuel. Is that true, or is it a myth, or what's the best advice there?
So like first of all, it's more about kind of like your total intake throughout the day. That's number one. So if you're to kind of get an analogy around it, like it's almost like a car fuel tank. Like you want to make sure that's full kind of throughout the day. Um with then after that, what you want to do is make sure that you're getting enough protein that's spread out throughout the day. So total protein intake is going to be the most important in terms of recovery. And then kind of after that, it comes into timing of protein intake. So once you're ticking the two kind of bottom boxes first in terms of fueling and getting enough protein, it definitely can benefit then eating something kind of after a training session. And particularly a lot of people don't feel like kind of eating at that stage. So something like even like a whey protein shake or dairy products like yogurts and protein milk or regular milk as well too are a lot more like they're a lot easier on the stomach than something like a dinner. So trialing something like that as well too definitely it would help recovery.
Right, yeah. The importance of maybe hydrating well then as well, again in your training, but also obviously closer to race day and on race day as well, but just in general overall.
Yep. So, like I find it's probably not looked at enough, really, kind of in training. Like a lot of people wouldn't be bringing kind of water out with them as well, and are surprised normally when I'm recommending, like stash a few bottles around the place like that.
Mm.
Definitely another thing worth practicing with. Um, because generally with Cork Marathon, like for the past few years anyway, it's been absolutely roasting.
Roasting, yeah.
Yeah, I sweating last year kind of and got sunburned the previous year, like so, like water is going to be of like really important in those conditions. Like it mightn't be warm now and stuff like that, but just kind of getting going with it and making sure again that you're that you're practicing with it because like if you don't introduce water until the day of the actual event, like you don't know how your stomach's going to react to that as well too, and you don't have a plan on how much to actually kind of take in, how regular you're going to take it in. And like I'm even talking through just the whole course kind of with people and like outlining, look, this is where the first water stop is, and making sure that they have enough to kind of get to that stage as well, and also outlining where the Lucasade kind of stops are as well, which there probably should be way more of those as well, kind of on the course. But it's really important because it's super easy to become dehydrated, and like the last thing you want to do is like in those conditions you could pass out fairly fast
Yeah, yeah,
in when
absolutely.
it's so warm.
Yeah, it's not hard enough without dealing with that, I suppose.
Yeah, like, and you don't
Yeah,
want to pass out on the day, like when you've
yeah.
done so much training.
Just one other thing in kind of from the fueling side and like supplements and things like that. Again, a lot of people are becoming more aware of supplements and change. Like again, would you recommend or what ways should people approach that?
Yeah, so like supplements again, like they're meant to kind of like it's in the name, they supplement the diet overall.
Mm,
Like I would definitely focus like on the food side of things first, and making sure that you're getting enough. In terms of supplements, that can be handy. Like you obviously have the gels, and practicing kind of with those. Things kind of like there is just the beetroot juice shots as well too. Some people like find them beneficial on the lead up to a race. And like the main thing is they can be kind of pricey like that. So it's something, if it works for you and you find a benefit, then definitely do. Or you're looking for a specific time, and you're competing in the marathon, then yes, if it's something that you're just kind of, doing for fun, probably not really needed.
Yeah.
Um and things like beta alanine then just they reduce kind of muscle fatigue as well too. Like it can be worth a shot. Um like outside that, the electrolyte use, like a lot of people will use electrolytes, and the main thing with that is that you're not overusing electrolytes, that sometimes they're not like really kind of necessary a lot of the time as well too. And like people could be taking in a ton of electrolyte tablets, and it could be just dehydrating them more because they're adding kind of more salts onto, like, even if they're not kind of meeting their fluid requirements every hour of that race, and they're becoming dehydrated that way, and then they're putting more kind of sodium on that with electrolytes. It
Mhm.
just kind of can make things worse as well too. And
Yeah.
plus it impacts the stomach in those conditions as well. So you're just gonna have to experiment with those and see what works best.
Yeah, interesting. So let's move it around or a different angle now. So obviously we have our four leaders, but just we can take them or anyone in general who contacts you and says, "Okay, I'm training for a marathon, and how am I going to work with you, or what are you going to do for me? How does that relationship work?" We probably know quite well how a running coach works with their uh, clients, I suppose, for want of a better word. But again, for you and the relationship with a runner, how does that work?
Yeah, so hopefully they've contacted me like 3 months plus, like in advance. That's not always the
Not the day
case.
beforehand.
You get some people 2 weeks beforehand. Look, I want to do nutrition for a marathon. Like you definitely need like about 3 months anyway to practice and make sure that you're getting the fueling right. So that's the main thing. Like the time is essential with that. Um, so like normally what we do is start out just making sure that they're fueling enough. So a lot of the time we'll just like we'll track their food at the start, see are they getting enough food, enough carbohydrates, and then kind of work with that over the first kind of 3 weeks. A lot of people start to notice just kind of the energy increases from that, because it tends to be a lot more food than they're used to. And like 9 times out of 10, we'll find that people are underfueling. And once we get their carbohydrates and food up, then it's like a total game changer. So that would be the first few weeks. Um, as the runs kind of then gradually get longer, we'd adapt that kind of fueling to it, making sure that like the carbohydrates are increasing, that um like again they're the right carbohydrates as well too. And like if you give too like people too much kind of fiber, like again that can cause stomach issues. So you just have to make sure there's a right mix of the high fiber and the kind of bland carbohydrates in there. Um then we'll move on to things kind of like just timing, and especially around the really long runs. They're good ones to kind of practice things like the carb loading around, and also nutritional timing, and just making sure that they're practicing like with their pre and post meal, that they're practicing with their gels, their sports drinks when they're out on a run, and that they're able to practice just around the carb loading as well too, with the day before one of the longer runs. After that, like we'd assess what went right, what didn't go right, if they had any kind of gastro issues, and then kind of adjust to that. And over the span of another kind of 2 to 3 weeks, like you come up with a fairly solid plan that I get them to kind of follow then up on to race day, to make sure that it's fairly foolproof. um then kind of finally towards the end of it, like what we do is as you're saying, like go through the map, make sure that they know when they're taking kind of fluid, like have a rough idea of when they're taking fluids and taking gels and sports drinks, so that they're not they don't have to kind of worry about all the food and all the different stops when they're in the run. They can just kind of concentrate on the run, and that helps so much as well too. Like if you are kind of competing, um, and that way you can also be confident, like at you can give your all at the end of the race as well too. So yeah, like that's the main thing. Like we normally see probably performance benefits of up to about 20% of kind of people on the plan, and we've seen some unbelievable kind of marathon stories as well too, just from the improved nutrition. Like even if it's something as little as like preventing stitches as well too, like it's mental what nutrition can do. So um yeah,
Yeah.
that's it.
And I have to say, even from my own experience, like my last marathon was one of my better ones. And I think the main gain I made from previous marathons was improving my nutrition around the race itself, but also on the race day. And like, I think there's people look for 1% everywhere, but fueling is certainly a lot more than 1%, as I said, in the week beforehand, but in your normal week, but also on race day. I think it's critical you get that right.
Definitely, yeah, yeah. Um, it's yeah, and even like what we do in race, like speaking of race day, like we factor in kind of nerves as well too. Like
Yeah.
that's a big thing. It's totally different showing up with a big crowd and stuff like that. So we prep people for that as much as we can too. Just kind of keep an eye on the nerves on the day.
Mhm.
It's a lot, but
Yeah. And celebrate well, obviously, after the race then as well.
celebrate well. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
A lot of
Plenty,
that.
plenty of carbs there as well. Okay,
Yeah.
before we leave it, I'll ask you. I might be putting on your spot here, small, but like if you were to give a golden tip of a do and a don't, maybe is there any kind of golden tip? I know there's so much, but maybe if there was one thing in particular, maybe.
Uh, the golden tip of kind of do would be just like this kind of two, just like ensure that you are fueling enough for your longer runs, and like even track your food and get a rough estimate of what your energy requirements are. Um, like would be kind of the main one, and the second one would be just practice and give yourself time. I think there's a whole like there's a really important point in terms of practice and things and not showing up on the day and just winging it, like because you could you could end up just in the bathroom for the whole thing, like if it
You
goes
know about
wrong.
it. You'll know about it somewhere anyway.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And then like the kind of golden tip for don't, um, I suppose it would be like I always say it, but like a few people have come to me in terms of carb loading and said, look, I had a takeaway or a pizza or something like the night before. Probably like don't do something like that,
Mhm,
because again, like it'll probably ruin your race and ruin your stomach the next day. So yeah.
mhm. Okay, brilliant. So we'll put up your details there, Dan, again for people and how they can get in touch with you. We're not inside the 2 weeks time frame yet, so still plenty of time for people to get in touch with you and get some brilliant advice, I've no doubt, for preparing for a marathon. So thanks, Dan, for your time. We really appreciate it. We hope people get a good benefit out of this.
Thank you.